Hey, we're back for video number 5. We're going to put reinforcing fin and launch lug fillets on in this point. And let's take a look at what I foresee us needing in this step. Here you can see just something to wipe your finger off and wipe excess glue off if it gets on something. I've just got paper towels, but I've also, just because I want to be ready when I need them, I've just kind of broke them into little pieces. So if you have like a napkin, you can tear it into a few, like 4 or 5 equal parts. Just set that aside. That's funny. Here I have a little tiny cup, little plastic cup, and I've just put a little bit of water in there. That's so I can, if I have to, I may not need to, I can dip my finger and smooth out the glue as it dries as we build up the fin fillets. Obviously, the star of this step is going to be glue. You need glue to build up these fin fillets. Now, if you don't know what those are, let me just explain to you the problem we have. We have this thing built out of, cardstock. Now, it's pretty thick cardstock, but this is going to be flying up in the air hundreds and hundreds of feet. 300, 400. If you put, depending on what engine you put in this thing could go potentially very high. If you put a D, you can actually cram a D engine in this. Okay. So we've got to reinforce these a little bit. They're just glued on there by that little thin band that connects to the tube. We're going to reinforce that to make it stronger. Oh, and by the way, also, unless we add too much weight to it, as long as we don't add too much glue, it actually makes it more aerodynamic. So let me show you, and we're also going to do the same thing, by the way, right here on the launch lug. Let me show you kind of the idea of what we're going to be building. This is the rear view. So this is like you're looking at the back end of somebody's rocket. You can see how they've built up this side of it? Instead of just the fin, they've actually built it up and reinforced it. Now, we're not going to do anything that big, but if we look, we can see they've definitely built that up in the corner. And that extends all the way along that edge of the fin to make it much stronger, okay? Because if we can put this, there's actually, like 5 or 6 times as much gripping space for it to grab onto the tube also. So it's going to increase how tough those fins are and how hard it is for it to break off, just in case something doesn't go right during one of our rocket flights. We've got to build this to last. Okay. Now, we have 10 fillets, 11, 12 if you count the 2 that we have to do on here. I want you to discount on the fact that the first fillet you make is probably going to be the worst, and you're going to wish later that you could go back and redo it, but it's okay. I would advise you one thing, that make sure that your glue bottle is flowing good and easy, and it's got a good nozzle here. If this has been left out to dry, it might be gummed up in there. So before you get going, squeeze out a little bit on the paper towel and make sure it's flowing. This one is flowing great. So that means if I just squeeze it a little bit, I'll be able to control it very easily. If you have to squeeze it really hard, it's not going to be good for this step. And what you can do is you can actually take off this top piece with your, if you have a pair of pliers, you can grab it and take this piece off and clean it out inside of there with some hot water. And eventually you'll get the lid clean. That's what I had to do because I left this open after one of our other build videos, actually the fin video. I left my bottle open. Okay, so I've got everything ready to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab, and I'll just start off with, see I got some glue on the end still. I'm going to close this up so it stops coming out. And so what I'm going to do is I want to do smooth and steady line to apply it in this little crack. And where we're going to put it, looks like I got a piece of dog fur got in here with the glue. What's going on with that? Okay, got it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the edge of this right in here, and we're going to use it to apply a bead of glue. A bead is just one solid line. So I put this bottle right in the corner, and I simply barely squeeze. And I got air bubbles. Air bubbles are no good. You want to get rid of those. There we go. Yeah, see, my first one's going to be probably the worst. I really overdid it down here. And I've got some extra coming out the top there, which I can just take an edge of a piece of paper towel. Oh, now I'm smearing it on my rocket, so I go back the other way. I just go real careful with the glue. And I'm going to let that kind of dry. I put way too much down here, but that's fine. We'll take that off in a second. And I'm going to do this other one right here, because we can do 2 at a time, because until that other one dries, we really don't want to rotate this around. So we can do this other one over here. Yeah, I'm really overdoing it, I think, but there we go. Now I'm going to let that just kind of sit for a little while, and I'm going to hold it there. We got to be patient. You can kind of blow on it a little bit to make it dry a little quicker. We don't want to let this dry all the way. We just wanted to let it kind of get tacky a little bit. You can see these are far from perfect. It's kind of hard to see them. There you go. That's a better angle, isn't it? See, I on this one here, I can tell you I started off with way too much. That was right when I started doing it. So I put a lot right here at this end, down in that bead. And again, we don't want to rotate it anyways away from here. We're going to watch the angle with my lighting so you guys can see this better. I may have flooded it with too much light a little bit. Still getting the hang of this new document camera that I'm using to record with. All right, sip of coffee. And now what I'm going to do, now that it's had a second to tack up, is I'm just going to barely dip the tip of my finger in here, and then kind of dry it off on one of these chunks of paper towels. But I want to keep it a little bit, just barely damp. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull in that crevice. And see, I'm removing glue. That's what the paper towel is for. Clean it off. A little bit wet, just barely. Get most of the water off. We don't want it soaking wet. It'll get our cardboard tube warped. And I just pull it off. And the curve of my finger, see how the end of my finger is curved? That's actually creating that nice fillet shape in there. And hey, I do these all the time. And you know what? Sometimes I hit a home run and I make some awesome fillets that are just perfectly smooth and they just look great. Every now and again, I still do ones that aren't that great. Like these, I got to tell you, it's been a few months since I've made a fillet. And I'm a little out of practice. These are a little bit weak. So, oh, I got glue on there a little bit. That's why we have this stuff to clean it up. Okay. And even though this glue is non-toxic, I do not recommend licking it. Okay, I have that bad habit, but I'm going to say that you shouldn't do that. See, I'm just taking some off, but I'm leaving some. I'm not pushing way down there to get my finger as far in as I can. I just want to take some off the top and smooth it out. Okay, those look pretty good for now. See those? Let's see if we can take a look, and I don't know how this is going to work. There you go. You can kind of see them. See right here. You can see that that's kind of curved in there. That's where these are. See how that's kind of rounded out compared to when you look at this one that's not done yet. The valley still goes in there deep. So what does this do for us? It strengthens them and decreases aerodynamic drag. So makes your rocket go further, it makes your rocket go faster, which is awesome. That's what we want, right? That's the cool part. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat that same process on all of these fins. You know, I'm pretty sure you don't want to watch me do that 5 times in a row, but you know what I'm going to do now? So I'm going to skip while you're watching, and I'll come back at the end and show you all of them when they're done. But I'm going to skip to this part now, which is the launch lug. So in the same way that we rounded off that, we're going to use some glue fillets to round off this little slant in here and this little valley right in here. So we're going to be filling in quite a bit of glue on the launch lug. Okay, so same procedure as before, or very similar, I'll say. I'm going to get it flowing over here a bit, make sure, and apply steady pressure. And there it is, a bead of glue. Uh-oh, that one ran over the edge. Now, I got to be careful because that could block the launch rod from going in if I let it dry like that. I'm not going to let it dry like that, but if it did, it would certainly block off that launch rod. And we know that we need the launch rod to stabilize our rocket for the first few feet. Or we need the launch lug to do that in conjunction with our launch rod, that big, long metal rod. It's going to stabilize our rocket. Okay, I'm going to let this kind of tack up a little bit. Whoa, got to be careful blowing on it. It kind of deformed the glue a bit, but that's fine. I'm going to come back with my finger in a minute on that. This time I'm going to go from this side out because it's easier to clean up the mess. That actually seemed to work much better for me when I look at the front of the bead of glue as it's coming out. This one was much better. See, usually it takes me about 3 or 4 of them, and I finally like, okay, that's a lot better. Okay, so let's go back to this first one. You can see, big old glob in the front. Not a good glue fillet. So my skills are a little bit out of date, but they're coming back to me. Okay, dab it in the water, then clean it up just a bit. I like to roll my finger to get a fresh part to grab glue with as it's coming off. So I'll kind of roll it a little bit like this as I'm coming across. I got a bit right there. Uh-oh, got it on the tube. And remember, if we need to, we don't want to do it when it's super damp like that. That's way too much. I'll squeeze it onto the rest of it. So it's just barely damp, and I can kind of clean that up. We don't want to get our tube too wet because that is cardboard tube, and water will destroy it. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here. Man, that one looks really good, but clean it up a little bit. Okay. And let me show you a top view. Let's take a look at what that looks like now. Now that we have one set of fin fillets, I have to do all the rest, right? I just wanted to show you guys this, and let's look at the top of this now. And you can see we've now filled this in. Let's see if I can do this with the camera. There it is. We filled this in right here with a nice rounded curved fillet. And likewise right here, same thing. Right in there. Okay. And if we look, it lines up pretty well. Our launch lug seems to line up pretty well. I guess, yeah. So, okay, so now what I'm going to do is, since you guys don't want to probably watch this, I'm going to actually, I've done these 2 glue fillets. I have to turn it, do 1, 2 here, turn it, 1, 2 here, turn it. And I got to be careful that I don't touch this while it dries. I almost just did that. Turn it here. And then once we have that, we will have a much, much more aerodynamic and a much more robust and strong and destruction-proof rocket. Or not destruction-proof, but much more resilient and resistant to destruction. Okay? And that's what we want. We want to be able to launch this thing many times. Like this little rocket I kind of used in the last video that I just showed, this thing has at least 10 launches. I mean, that thing's been up hundreds of feet in the air at least 10 times. It's made out of 3D printed nylon. Okay, so I'm going to pause and come back when I'm done with all of those. All right, so we're back, and I think I'm just about done. Let's move this out of the way and kind of show you guys the results. You can see we got rounded edges on all of our fins. Slight rounding with glue, and that glue is going to sit in there, so the glue becomes part of the rocket. It becomes actually part of the structure of the rocket, not just something that holds 2 things together, but actually adds structure to it by adding volume to the edges. So instead of a tiny little connection, we have a much wider, stronger, and more robust connection. This is going to go much better. Now, if you look, this is what's interesting. This is, if you ask people who are into model rockets, in the community, they will talk about fin fillets. A lot of them, almost all of them do it. But it's interestingly enough, it's not a part of the instructions that Estes tells you to do for the model rockets, as far as I can remember. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this step, and I'm going to leave this to dry. I'm going to be careful that I don't touch those fillets for a while, because that glue, that's a chunk of glue in there, and it takes it a while to dry up. And next we're going to move on to the shock cord. So I'll see you guys in the next video.